Ciao ragazzi, my name is Anthony. Welcome back to Inter Worldwide. It is an honor and a pleasure to be joined by the one and only Richard Hall with me today. Richard, how are you, sir?
I'm very well. All good after the Supercoppa, and I'm really glad to be here. So thanks for having me.
Anytime, my friend. Richard Hall needs no introduction, but I know him best for being the English spokesperson of the official voice of the Inter podcast. It's an absolutely amazing voice to have, bringing us that official news from the Inter platform. And what a day to connect with him as well. The day after the Supercoppa win, a very emotional 120 minutes, my friend. So why not we just get started with that in context? I'm guilty of setting up my camera and getting ready for penalty shootout for a reaction on my channel, and I really did not expect that to happen. But Richard, overall, how are you feeling with that fixture, and more importantly, with that win?
Listen, I'm guilty as charged as well. My tweet was ready to go to say, here we go, it's penalties. It was all done. I was trying to work out who was going to be the first up, and looking at the list, and then obviously Alexis, does it for us. Look, two things on that. One, just the drama, first of all. First of all, the win itself should have been more emphatic. You look at the possession stats, into 67, if I remember rightly, percent possession, 20 plus shots on goal, Juve 6, nearly double the amount of passes. It should have been emphatic. Instead, it was dramatic, and it was nervy. It was nervy towards the end. We were quite lucky, and the fact what was quite nice in some ways is that Allegri, Bonucci and co were all shouting at the Juventus players to put the ball out of play or to foul one of the Inter players so they could put Bonucci on for the penalties. And ironically, they distracted Alexandro and De Cilio, and the rest is history, as you say. You mentioned the word context, and I think that's really important about this Inter win, because it's not just the Supercoppa, which obviously is important in Italy anyway. It's massive. This was huge on the basis that you could argue that it's a changing of the guard, whichever term you want to use, a passing of the baton. You would have thought that was when Inter won the Scudetto, but in fact, it probably wasn't, because obviously Inter lose Conte, Hakimi, Lukaku, and there's questions. Ronaldo at the time is still at Juventus, and Allegri comes back, and people are thinking, can Inter do it again? You fast forward to now, and I think Inter have done so well. The thoughts from in the club and the players, from what we've been told, is that they are happy with the way that Inzaghi's allowed them to express themselves. They're allowed to be, they're allowed to play. They're not as structured, not as rigid. They're keeping the discipline. So they're happier in a sense. And they think Inzaghi's more like a friend and a player than a coach at the moment, and it's working for them. But they wanted Inzaghi. We spoke to Mattia Darmian before the game. He was really insistent that they wanted to get Inzaghi to get his first trophy, to get that piece of silverware. And more importantly, it was more important because it was against Juventus. Because Juventus, in the situation they're in right now, they've got a lot of work to do. We don't need to go into Juventus. That's a separate podcast for different people. But with Inter, the win against Juventus felt a statement that was the end of an era almost, and this was a new era. Inter, for me now, have set the goal now. We've got the deepest squad, probably the best 1 to 11, arguably. And now it's about up to Juventus to catch Inter. It's up to Atalanta, to Milan, to Napoli to catch Inter. So for me, I think that the players felt that, and that's why this Supercoppa, it was hyped up because of the drama at the end, which made it a little bit more special. But now I think that Inter have got to look forward and think, okay, they're a leading team in Serie A, and they are now wanting that next Scudetto, and it's up to the rest to catch.
Absolutely. I love that term, changing of the guard. And my next question was, what exactly does it mean for this team winning something tangible like the Supercoppa mid-season? Because we know this is a trophy that's usually contested at the start of the season. I dare say this is exactly the sort of booster players like this needed to basically push on for that goal, which, is the second star on the badge of the chest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that he's still winning, I'm not going to say winning's everything that counts, because that's stealing someone else's motto. But it's the fact of once you start winning silverware, there's a term in in Italy basically that means the more you eat, the hungrier you get, and that is exactly what it is right now. For Inzaghi to get his hands on that trophy again, for him, it's something the team will trust him. They believe they can win silverware against a very good team. No matter, even if Juventus are in a bit of a turmoil at the moment, they're still a very difficult team to beat. It's a rival. It's important. And I think what it does, it sets them up. I mean, I have to be honest. I was talking to Thomas Lawrence, who we do the podcast with, and he's a little bit more optimistic than I am. And I was worried about January. I was worried about Lazio, worried about Juventus, looking at Atalanta coming up. We've got the February, we've got the double Liverpool head, we've got the derby. Big games. But to win against Lazio and then to win silverware, it gives the team the boost. It gives the team the confidence that they are as good, if not better, than last year. And when you say, searching for that second star in the chest, that's all they can do. So, yeah, it's massive. And I like the fact that it's come mid-season because Inter have already got a good part of the season behind them, a lot of points on the board. And, if you imagine if we'd have lost against Lazio and lost in the Supercoppa, the trip to Bergamo doesn't seem as fun. Never going to Bergamo is kind of fun anyway. But yeah, it gives a lot more confidence and a belief in the team.
Absolutely, man. Something very important that Steven Zung has taken care of business-wise when he's come down here. It's pretty much just surfaced today, my friend, if I'm not mistaken, that we are looking at bumping the contracts of all the important board members, Marotta, Ausilio, and co. My friend, how important has Marotta and Ausilio been in not only just keeping the ship afloat from what was a very detrimental economic situation at Inter in context to the rest of the world, COVID and all, but they've actually kept this ship steering in the right direction of success. It's been an amazing performance from our backroom, mate.
Absolutely. I mean, credit Steven Zhang. I mean, at times people were saying that he was stubborn, that he probably should have sold the club. Obviously, still looking for investors because they've got to do something about that loan from Oaktree that's still outstanding, and that's got to be put to bed at some point. And and again, go back to that question again about winning trophies. If you're looking for investment in a club, you want to be winning trophies. You want to be top of the league. You want to be qualifying from your Champions League group. It makes your brand, it makes your product more attractive to those investors. So that, all these things, it's not just a trophy. They have so many different knock-on effects. Boosting the contracts of the backroom staff is massive. Ausilio, great. The work that Zanetti's been doing obviously has been very good because of the character he is. But listen, you can talk about coaches, you can talk about strikers, you can talk about, anyone in that team, you can talk about, but none of it's possible in my eyes without Beppe Marotta. I think he's our biggest asset. I think you only need to look across at Juventus. I run the site, The Gentleman Ultra, and our editor's a Juventus fan, and he's knows a lot of people from Turin. And his biggest loss is Beppe Marotta. Paratici wasn't the guy. They struggled. We've got a new guy in now, of course. We'll see what he does. But Beppe Marotta's got that blueprint that he put together with Conte. Now, even things like, going under the radar as such. I mean, Onana coming in, a goalkeeper, whose distribution will outweigh what Handanovic can do. It will change our game again. It's little things that the signings that he's made, the signing of Dzeko, just the way that he works, not just with Conte, but how he's allowing Inzaghi to be himself. The connection between the boardroom and Inzaghi, the fact that he's almost an umbrella that takes away the pressure. It can't be said enough about what he's done. And for me, it's vital. I think that, Conte leaving in the summer was a problem. If Beppe Marotta had gone, I think it would have been catastrophic. It's fantastic that that's happened. And again, you're looking to have a situation where potentially Inter come out of this, where they have got the, Sunning still in place because they've given a lot to the club. It's not their fault. It's circumstance. We can't control the pandemic. We can't control, we certainly can't control we've probably got more chance of controlling the pandemic than the Chinese government. It's all these things come into play. But there's no questioning their loyalty and their ambition with the club. And if they can get some investment in the near future, clear that loan, the future's bright. And, as I said, even when we've not had a huge amount to work with, the signings that have come in, I mean, look at the price we got Dumfries for, should I say. And, you wouldn't have thought, at the start of the season, I'm guilty as charged. You say, I'm a big fan of Dzeko, and Dumfries looked very promising, but to replace Hakimi and Lukaku, it didn't seem possible. And yet we've got Dumfries playing out of his skin at the moment. And Dzeko has been, I wouldn't say he's a replacement. I would say he's the perfect stopgap between finding someone who's going to play long-term alongside Lautaro. So, listen, he's been brilliant, and can't say enough about what Beppe Marotta's done.
Yeah, absolutely. And just segueing into that question right there, I mean, the signings that we ended up making, I was also guilty of feeling really, really nervous when you sell the likes of Romelu Lukaku and Achraf Hakimi. But all you can do is look at our rivals as well and see the contracts running down. And Pepe Marotta to pocket 200 million off these two players, it really is absolutely incredible business. And going on to talk about a few of those signings now, Richard, not only Dzeko, but Hakan, Denzel Dumfries, Federico Di Marco, the players that have come into this season have actually been quite impressive. What do you have to say about our new signings this season that have come on to wear the jersey, man?
Absolutely, yeah, I think they have been impressive. I mean, when you just we'll just do the quick list through. I mean, obviously, when I said before, Dzeko being a stopgap, that sounds like I'm being harsh on him, but he understands his age, and the way he plays. I mean, you can see he's just so intelligent with his movement. He almost walks around the pitch a little bit, and then all of a sudden he's got that dart of pace, and he's in the right position, and he's just a very intelligent. And I actually think over his career, one of the most underrated strikers in the last 10 years. What he's actually been capable of. He should have probably. I wish he'd have been into 5 years earlier, but look, he hasn't been. He's here now, and he's doing a job. I do think the team is, and when you look at the likes of Hakan, Kanaloglu, been fantastic as well. Coming across from Milan, never easy. Changing the role, playing higher up the pitch, not playing as deep, taking on a more offensive role, having to release the ball quicker. His deliveries as well, along, and we can touch on DeMarco with this as well, have been a different class. It's actually given us, and Dzeko included in this, a dangerous outlook on set pieces, which we've not had. It's nice to see the fact that we can actually beat the first man on a corner for the first time in 10 years. So, it's one of those situations where they've come in and they've played to the top of the top level. Federico Di Marco, we've been out on loan. He's learned his craft elsewhere. He's come back and he just looks like an Inter player. I think he's got a big future ahead of him. You look at the assist in the Supercoppa, you look at what he's been doing. Correa, again, fits and starts, looks like showing elements of quality and dipping in and out. Now he looks like he's got more and more consistency. I know that people will look at the game against Lazio and see that shot that nearly ended up in a curva nord, but you look at, I want him to do more of that. I want him to try those runs. I want him to try those shots because I've got a lot of belief that he can be a big player for Inter in the foreseeable future. And, but I think when we're looking at these new players that have been, I mentioned Dumfries before, who for me is just, his improvement's been quite staggering. Very, very impressed. But as well, I think that what we're seeing as well is some real improvement from some of, I'm not going to call them the old guard, but when you look at the likes of Brozovic, I think Brozovic has been probably our best player potentially this season. And the contract is so important that's coming up with him. He's been brilliant. Also, massively have to talk about Ivan Perisic. I don't know if it's his kickboxing he's been doing in the summer, but he looks unbelievable. I mean, he's so fit at the moment and so dangerous on the left-hand side. And the fact that he's defending as well as he's done is it's something else. I think that's the thing about this team with Inzaghi, that he's managing to maximize everything out of every player. There isn't a player who's lapse. There isn't a player who you think's slipping. We might not have the best quality in every single area, but I'd compare it to an Atalanta team, that Gasperini has at the moment. They're interchangeable. You can take a player out. You can put, you could take out Dzeko. You can put Correa in, and you're not losing anything as such. You can take Di Marco out. You can put Perisic in, or vice versa. You can put Darmian in, who's playing very well, and take out Dumfries. You're not losing anything. And that interchangeability of that team, and and alongside your obvious Barelas and your Martinez, it's a real unit at the moment. So the fact that Inzaghi has managed to integrate these players into that mindset so quickly is a credit to him.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you mentioned this gentleman here, Matty Darms. He's a part of a group of what I call the unsung heroes in Inter. We might only have one Capitano on paper, but I swear to God, man, we've got about 7 or 8 in that dressing room. When you've got Dzeko as the captain of Bosnia, you signed Denzel Dumfries, who was the captain of PSV. You've got captains of Croatia. You've got Andrea Ranocchia, and you know, we've got these players like Ranocchia, D'Ambrosio, or even Darmian and Gagliardini to an extent where they're not expected to take the pitch every day, mate, but they know the weight of this crest. They love this club. They know what it means to play for this club, and they're almost as instrumental as the players that play 90 minutes plus, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. And the three players you mentioned there are probably the three most unsung heroes in this team. You know, Darmian, we spoke to before, as I said before the Supercoppa, and just the passion that he had about winning this tournament, you know, and he probably knew that he wasn't going to get a lot of minutes. You know, it doesn't matter. They're ready when called upon. And, you know, you can see that, and they have the ability. And again, you know, they're not sulking. They're not annoyed that they may not feature. It's that collective again, and it's that mentality that Inter have now. And I've got to say, in a weird way, it's a bit of a Juve mentality that they used to look at Juventus, and in the 90s they didn't always have the best of the teams, but you have players like Torricelli, Delivio, and you know, you wouldn't say that they're the best players in the world at the time in comparison to what was around, you know, especially in the 90s. But they were the players who would constantly perform every single week in, week out, and that team mentality. And Inter have that. And that takes, you don't just get that from Barella and Lautaro. You get that from players the squad players in a sense. Darmian, as I said, you know, the passion he had to win that trophy was massive. D'Ambrosio, you know what, over the years, even when Inter haven't been fantastic, what a big game player he's been. You know, you can bring him on and the goals he's got at special times, and he's not meant to. You know, the fact that he's adaptable to right back, he can flick to centre back. He keeps himself in ridiculous shape at his age. They're just there's no question about that. And I've completely. Oh, and the other one, of course, yeah, Gagliardini. You know, I mean, I think he's got he's got a couple of goals, a cracker. I can't remember who it was against. That was absolutely
Spezia, probably.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I think absolutely brilliant goal. And again, you know, he comes in and he does a job, and he's tireless, absolutely tireless. And yeah, it's good to see that. It's good to see those players that, you know, they don't get the recognition. But for players in the squad, and for younger players, especially from a Primavera or coming into the squad, to look at these players who aren't playing week in, week out, and look at their professionalism, that's how you play. And that's what you do. You don't sulk, and you be professional. So, yeah, it's a joy to see, actually. And you're right. They are unsung heroes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The Serie A, it's got to be our aim again. We've pushed ourselves into a position, Richard, where we can't admit that we're not going for it. We are going for it. What are your expectations from the end of the season? You cover Inter, you watch it more than almost anybody. How are we going to go, man? Do you see us maintaining our position as the strongest side in Serie A until the end of the campaign?
I think so. I hope so. That's definitely the aim. I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, you know, from the limited things I hear from the club, the dressing room and whether it's the media department right through to the playing staff, you know, it's the Scudetto is the aim. There's no question to maintain that. I think that's becoming more and more. It feels like, this isn't a direct quote of what anyone said, but it feels like that momentum is building and building and building more and more. The belief is getting more and more every single game, and I think that comes from things like you know, when you look at the fact of qualifying for the Champions League, then there's more belief, and then the Supercoppa, there's more belief. Even like the win against Lazio, and it's, you know, it's almost seen as, right, you beat us the first time, now it's almost revenge. We've got that done. It's now move on. I think the next 2 months are going to be really telling. There are some really tough fixtures coming up. But so far, the way Inter have started, you know, they're allowing themselves a little bit of breathing space. And I think that's it. Every single game you go, you know, if they go to Atalanta and win, it allows you a little bit more breathing space, and continues like that. And I think what Inter are doing as well is they are showing the rest of Serie A that just how strong they are. My hope is the Scudetto for one reason, really. I think in its strength and depth. There's not many teams, as we saw in the Supercoppa, who can take off players like Lautaro and Dzeko and bring on Alexis and Correa. You know, and when you think about it, if you're going into extra time, you look at Alexis and you look at Correa, you think, oh my God, they're going to run at us. And they're just going to, and they did, you know. I mean, Alexis just works so hard. Not always in the correct manner. Sometimes, like against Lazio, it's sometimes not necessary for him to be picking the ball up outside his own box. But, you know, you look right through that squad. And as we talked about before, you can interchange most positions. Inter can afford to have a couple of injuries. Compare that to Lazio, for instance. I mean, you know, Maurizio Sarri is trying to play without Luis Alberto for whether that's right or wrong, that's not for me to decide. But if you have an injury to Milinkovic-Savic or Immobile, it's almost like the season feels like it's on the wane. AC have got AC Milan have got a cracking 1-11, but outside of that, you start to struggle a little bit. We saw them struggle when Mike Maignan was out and Solano came in. There was a few mishaps there. You could name that throughout. Napoli again, another great 1-11, but you scratch the surface and it's not there. Juve are just very disjointed at the moment. So I'm looking at the other teams as well. It's not just all about Inter. And whilst Inter might drop points in the coming months, and that's inevitable, I don't see another team that's going to be consistent all the way through to the end of the season. So that's why I think that the hopes for Inter are huge, because we're still in all three competitions as well, and the squad can potentially handle that. Obviously Liverpool's going to be a very, very difficult doubleheader. Empoli in the Coppa Italia. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw when I say a lesser team, the likes of Gagliardini, Darmian, and a few others probably start that for the Coppa, because they'll probably be necessary. But yeah, I mean, for me, Scudetto, there's no other. Beppe Marotta made a comment at the end of just before the Supercoppa, saying that Inter now have to deal with pressure. That's the team they are. They have to learn to deal with pressure game after game after game, and they have to expect to win. And that mentality needs to be there. Again, I hate to say it, but Beppe Marotta and Conte brought over that Juve mentality that has been there for a long, long time. And there's nothing wrong with that, in the sense of if it's about consistently winning, then that's okay. Because I'm sure that, the fact that you can see that Juve haven't got that at the moment probably makes it all the sweeter in the sense. And let's face it, I think we're all quite happy that no one's mentioned the word Pazza very much this season. So it's, for me, Inter have got to look for the Scudetto, and I thoroughly believe they've got the squad to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. The lack of Pazza is refreshing, man. And that was the last question I was going to ask you. Not the easiest tie in the world, especially when you're in Australia and you're watching the Champions League draw live at about midnight. You draw Ajax, you go to bed, you wake up 3 hours later, you rub your eyes. I swear to God, that wasn't the same team as it was 3 hours ago. But we come up against Liverpool in the round of 16. We've gotten there. It's a great achievement. But how do you think we can go, man? I know Liverpool, they do seem like they're on a little bit of a backslide under Jurgen Klopp. I'm optimistic that we'll walk off both legs feeling really good about ourselves no matter what.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Just going back on that, yeah, it was a frustrating change. We were about to do a podcast and we'd done so much, when it was Ajax, it was going out about 3 hours afterwards and did all the research on Ajax. And it was so good as well if it had been Ajax. There's so much. And then it was like straight away just before it goes out, it's Liverpool. Like, okay, we're going to do a pod with no research. But yeah, look, Liverpool are an incredible side. But Inter have got to have that mentality, like we said again. They can't be scared of Liverpool. Liverpool are a good side, but Inter also are a very good side. And what really made me think about the Liverpool game was the Supercoppa, funnily enough, because I felt that the Supercoppa was definitely another person tweeted this. It's Patrick Kendrick, who's used to be on Inter TV. And he said he's enjoying the game because it was played at the pace of a Champions League game. And I thought, yeah, you know what this game is? I mean, but yeah, I mean, look, the speed and the pace that the game was played at, and the way that Inter can counter, the speed they do. And also one of the things that impressed me, how quickly they got the ball back when they lost it in Juve's half, in Juve's box. Like swarm of wasps just over that ball and getting it back in. I think that will surprise Liverpool. I think it will. I think the intensity that Inter are playing with at this moment in time will not maybe match them. It's a different game they play, but it will surprise them and it will cause some problems. I think you rightly said it. I think I'm also confident with that. No matter what the result ends being at the end of those two legs, the Inter will walk off the field with their heads held high. And I don't see any reason that Inter can't come away with the result there. Liverpool are a good side, but they're not unbeatable. So, I think Inter need to start. I think that's what Beppe Marotta's point is that if Inter want to be back in, the later stages of the Champions League, winning Scudettos, they need to think like a big team. And if they're thinking like a big team, then Liverpool's a doable game.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Richard. It was an absolute pleasure to have you here on our humble little channel called Inter Worldwide. Thank you so much for delivering that, that authentic English taste to us, for all of us on Inter. We really enjoy it. And man, big hopes for the rest of the season. It really is an exciting time to be an Interista all over the globe.
Massively, massively. Listen, thank you so much for having me on. Anytime, I'd love to come back on. Great being on it. Always good fun to talk Inter, especially like you say at the moment. And yeah, keep up the good work. It's a great show.
Thank you so much, Richard. From all of us here at Inter Worldwide,